Bee, Iron Man 3 and many more. Extravision and HMV for fantastic deals this Christmas.
Welcome to Jervis Shopping Centre, in the centre of shopping. There's something special about being in Jervis Shopping Centre. Where else would you find the first Forever 21 store in Europe and the largest new look store in the world? Jervis is a place where everything comes together beautifully and easily. Yes, we like being in the centre. Jervis Shopping Centre Dublin, in the centre of shopping.
Tonight on Primetime, the battle of Sean and Gail Killalay Dunn against Nama. The couple claimed that Sean Dunn transferred millions of euro worth of assets to her before his business collapsed. Nama says he fraudulently did so after he was bust. And perhaps the biggest medical scandal of recent years, thalidomide. We report on the reality of life for Ireland survivors and the claim that their compensation is inadequate. That's Primetime at 10:35.
Blonad joins the Irish Air Corps on maritime patrol in Ireland's search and rescue tomorrow night at 8:30. Now, every story has two sides. My Lockout explores them both.
Jim Larkin arrived in Dublin in 1908. To some, he came as a saviour. To others, he was just a troublemaker. Larkin's troublesome plan was to organise unskilled and low-paid workers into one big trade union.
I remember my dad once in O'Connell Street, he pointed up to the statue and said, "There you go, that's your great-granddad," and I didn't believe him.
You look at photos and you think, is she one of them? Is she standing there? And at 15, did she stand and think, this man is just amazing and he's going to help all of us here?
But employers led by William Martin Murphy were alarmed at Larkin's growing influence. In September 1913, they began to dismiss union members and replace them with scab labour. Within weeks, 25,000 workers were on strike and their families on them. Photographer John Cook and his assistant captured some remarkable images in September of that year.
They photographed what they saw. They didn't leave things out just because it was ugly. They were not professional photographers, either of them, but I think that's the reason why these photographs are so interesting and so special. When you see the condition that many of the houses were in, the scars throughout the city of houses that had been demolished, the rubble that was just simply lying around, the mud on the streets and in the little lanes, particularly the alleyways and courtyards. Well, there's the one photograph of the interior of one of the houses on Francis Street. And there's the bed in the photograph, which is really the main part of the photograph. And then you look closely and you realize that there's actually a little child asleep in the bed. And I don't think she's just having a nap. I suspect that she's very, very ill and sick. And she's probably one of a large number of kids in that family, all sleeping in the one bed.
Killer diseases such as TB and pneumonia were rampant in the slums. Children were most at risk.
They probably were ready for Larkin, but they wouldn't have heard much like this before. The idea that somebody, particularly a big, tall, handsome man with a huge voice and a great talent for rhetoric, suddenly arrives in town and starts preaching the divine gospel of discontent to the wretched of the earth is remarkable. He's a celebrity, and we have to remember that he didn't have microphones, but thousands of people would turn up for his speeches. He had a powerful voice, but he couldn't be heard at the back of 10,000 people. So as he's speaking, there are people passing his sentences back from one to the other over their shoulders.
Larkin was standing up for them, and he was the voice. Imagine someone listening to Larkin and going back to the tenement house and saying, what a speech. That man knows what he's saying. That man knows our conditions. He knows what we're going through.
Just a few streets beyond the tenements, it was a different story. The Catholic middle class was on the move and enjoying a new affluence. Dublin's electric tram network was one of the finest in the British Isles and a huge source of pride. William Martin Murphy was in charge of this efficient service. He was a wealthy and powerful businessman with a string of interests across the city. Murphy's tramway company was an obvious target for Jim Larkin. Early in 1913, Larkin began recruiting the relatively well-paid workforce into his expanding union.
One of the reasons he was successful was that William Martin Murphy, for the only time in his life, was out sick. But when Murphy came back in July and found out what was going on, he was horrified.
Murphy acted decisively to remove the threat. He began to fire workers who dared to join the union. It was a ploy that forced Larkin's hand and propelled the city into lockout.
The men said, look, you recruited us, this union, you said you'd get us better pay and conditions, and now we're losing our jobs. So what are you going to do about it?
The union's response came on the morning of Tuesday, the 26th of August. It was Ladies' Day at the Dublin Horse Show, and Murphy's trams were busy. Larkin picked his moment to strike. At 20 minutes to 10, the network ground to a halt. On cue, drivers and conductors pinned on union badges and abandoned their trams.
The plan Larkin had, he looked at the schedules of the tramway company and he worked out that most of his members would be concentrated around Nelson's Pillar at 9:40 a.m. on that morning. So he reckoned if he could stop the trams at that precise moment, he could jam up the whole system. The men left the trams, some of them even took the spare handles with them to ensure they couldn't be readily started again, and marched off to Liberty Hall.
Tom Stokes' grandfather John was among the first tram drivers to walk off the job.
For somebody like my grandfather, that decision that each man had to make, will I do it or will I walk away from it, was a huge one. I think that his own rebelliousness would have made him go on with it. But for all of the tram drivers, this was a huge step. To take that control lever, the key out of the tram and to walk away and leave a tram load of people behind, that was it, your job was gone. He certainly didn't do it for an extra bob or two. It was motivated by a belief in what Larkin and Connolly and others were saying about workers' rights and about making progress.
Larkin's plan was to gridlock the tram network, but Murphy had other ideas.
Next up in ring 1.
The strike looked like a damn squib. The problem was that Murphy had spies and he had replacement crews, went out to all these trams and even took spare handles. So the system was up and running again within an hour.
Murphy's shrewd anticipation of the strike delivered round one to the bosses. But events in the city were about to spoil the party. Later that night, Jim Larkin addressed tramway workers at Liberty Hall. If the employers want war, he said, they can have it. Over the next days, workers clashed with police reinforcements sent to keep the trams running. Baton charges left hundreds injured and 2 dead. On Sunday, Larkin defied a ban and appeared in disguise on the balcony of the Imperial Hotel on O'Connell Street. The hotel was owned by William Martin Murphy.
It's almost a piece of theatre. And Larkin, he was quite good at theatrical gestures. So you could blame him for, once again, displaying that egotistical side of his character. Perhaps he would defend himself by simply saying it was important for him to show defiance.
In the uproar which followed Larkin's arrest, police attacked the crowd on O'Connell Street, battering hundreds to the ground. Later that evening, tenement homes were attacked and ransacked.
The employers had the back end of the state, the police as well, and they used those to maximum effect. And that meant, look, let's get this under control once and for all. So the police were determined to take no prisoners. When they got the chance to lay in at the crack a few heads, oh, they didn't hold back.
Just 2 days after the baton charge in O'Connell Street, disaster of a different kind hit the tenements of nearby Church Street.
It must have been a nice evening. There's a lot of kids playing outside in the streets, and there was a play on the Fathermatcher Hall across the road here. The play, by the way, was called the Colleen Bon, and the people actually inside in the hall thought that the noise the there was a policeman on duty on the quays, and he actually heard the noise. He ran all the way up Church Street. He get them a dig out then looking for the people in the rubble.
Number 66 Church Street, home to 5 families, was first to go. The collapse came without warning. Victims were trapped by falling rubble. Of the 7 dead, 3 were children.
All we could do was roll them up on a sheet. We couldn't lift them. They were like jelly or pulp, smashed to pieces. The body of one victim, Margaret Rourke, was so shockingly mangled that it was impossible to identify her. And Margaret Rourke was my great-grandmother. She lived in number 66 Church Street. The legend in my house when we were kids growing up was that she was decapitated, and according to the newspaper reports, I'd say it was right.
This was a really shocking event that happens right in the middle of the lockout, and this was to have a very
100 fellow members of the Employers' Federation to turn the screw on Larkin. Employers gave workers an ultimatum: stay clear of the union or face immediate dismissal.
Murphy was absolutely determined to smash the transport union. The thing about the transport union was it had this mad man leading it as far as Murphy was concerned, and had this syndicalist ideology which wanted to basically create a workers' commonwealth and in the process expropriate all his businesses.
Look at me brother, Dennis the scab.
To keep their jobs, many workers were required to sign a pledge renouncing the union. If they refused, they were fired on the spot.
You read?
Yeah. I hereby undertake to carry out all instructions given to me by or on behalf of my employers.
Believe you.
And further agree to immediately resign my membership of the Irish Transport and General Workers.
Resign, Dennis!
I'm not joining as a part of the union, and I want to sign.
You should be ashamed of yourself. Putting your name to this. Our name. Our father's
It's only
name.
a piece of paper.
A piece of paper? Would you sign that? Would you? Who'd
It's
sign
over,
it?
Charlie.
It's not over.
William Martin Murphy, he realised that you could trump the threat of a general strike with the reality of a general lockout. And he pointed out to the other employers, these men have no resources. They cannot survive on their own. If we put them out of work, they have to come back on their hands and knees. He had deeper pockets than the unions, and he knew he could win. And Murphy was the type of man who would do the sums.
The bosses will speak to us soon, Dennis. They'll agree to collective bargaining.
Collective bargaining! Charlie, the bosses can hold on for as long as they want. They're having 3 hot meals a day. When's the last time you had a hot meal?
Within weeks, 25,000 workers and their families were affected by the lockout.
What are you going to do then?
For people with very little, the consequences were grim.
What are you going to do? Even our husband signed this morning.
The Tommy signed 2 scabs.
Charlie, I wanted it. Charlie, I'm on a scab.
By the end of the first week, this is no longer a simple industrial relations dispute. It's something far wider, and there's a lot more things at issue than whether the tramwaymen get their increase or not, or whether somebody joins a trade union or not. It's about class power.
Stick your hands up. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay, so we've only 4 dockers. I thought we had 8. What we do is when the vessel berths, there's 8 little sacks of food.
The dispute started as a row over union recognition, but it soon became a daily struggle to find enough to eat. Food supplies were disrupted by strikes and pickets. Prices rose sharply. For weeks, Jim Larkin promised union members and their families that help was on its way. In late September, like a miracle, the aid finally arrived.
If you could imagine that this guy has said something absolutely absurd, I'm going to bring a ship of food in, and you gather on the quays and all sorts of stories floating about there's a ship but Larkin's on it, there's no ship, etc., etc. And then it arrives in, and it's full of food. It's just quite unbelievable. And perhaps the thousands that lined the streets in 1947 when he died were either there on the day or were there on the day through the stories of their parents and grandparents.
Janine Kyle's grand aunt was Alicia Brady. Age 15, Alicia was a union member locked out of her factory job.
When we could see the ship pulling in, they were all waving their vouchers. So all of a sudden you were whisked back all them years ago and just thought, oh, my food parcel's coming. Before it was just stories that my granny told me of the story of Alicia Brady. Today, doing this is when I got the sense of Alicia. Seeing little kids, the rush to get bread, and there was a bit of nostalgia.
The SS Hare was only the beginning. Between September and January 1914, aid to the value of over £100,000 sterling was sent from Britain, worth an estimated 20 million today.
The food aid is an expression of a beleaguered people knowing that there is support coming from who knows where. They were not on their own. There was a sense of solidarity. After all, no other union had ever fed people like that on that scale before. So the union is acquiring again another coat of paint, which is transforming it from something which is simply a trade union to something which is at the very fabric of your life.
It's not a lark, there was a lump in my throat, you know, because you think she stood here and, oh, what is that? Oh.
400 employers supported the lockout, but Larkin's anger was directed at their leader, the man he labelled a capitalistic vampire.
For a Catholic businessman in the south of Ireland a century ago, he was unbelievably successful. People that worked for his companies would often talk about how he basically ran them like a military commander. It was a good job to have, but it was a
William Martin Murphy controlled Cleary's department store and 2 newspapers, the Irish Independent and the Evening Herald.
I am proud of William Martin Murphy and what he achieved. One of the things that I really remember from my childhood and also from working there was walking through the machine hall in Independent House when the 3 machines were going.
The Murphy family connection with independent newspapers spans 4 generations. Jerry Murphy retired in 2009 after nearly 40 years in the advertising department.
It was a noise of power. We are producing something that's going to affect thousands of people. And it was my great-grandfather started it. That was my pride.
The people here on Saturday, when the President, I believe, is laying a wreath at the statue to Jim Larkin, it's all going to be Jim Larkin is a wonderful person and William Martin Murphy is a swine. It annoys me, but when you're one person fighting the entire anti-Murphy group, what can you do?
Well, in the lockout there was, unfortunately, blood spilt on the streets, but there was also an awful lot of ink spilt at the time. There was a propaganda war going on. Every Saturday, the Irish Worker would be published, and that would essentially be replying to lots of attacks that would be happening against the Transport Union and against Larkin and Larkinism in the mainstream national press.
The union paper, the Irish Worker, helped lift the morale of strikers and their families. William Martin Murphy was a favourite target.
Larkin was always somebody who liked putting a face on the enemy. Some people will look at Ernest Kavanagh's cartoons and they will think they're far too vicious, they're far too vindictive. But I think with Larkin, he didn't really care.
On the surface, Murphy seemed untroubled by the attention. At the end of a day's work, he travelled by company tram to his home in the Dublin suburb of Dartry.
I have been here before. I was only a very, very small boy. The house itself hasn't really changed much. And I remember vaguely this monkey puzzle tree. I remember the little maze, the little box hedge. I mean, I have to say, I'm lost for words, really. I had never seen this particular cartoon before, and I must say that I find it very, very upsetting. That this creature is standing outside a house. That's the image of a man who created so much employment. Could anybody, faced with that, be anything but upset?
Much of what happened in 1913 was a personality war between Jim Larkin and William Martin Murphy. And you've got two demagogues on either side of the battle. The losers, I think, at the end of it, were the workers of Dublin.
On December the 18th, Alicia Brady was on the quays to collect her food parcel.
It was called the Puck. My granny mentioned it before. I got some bread, jam, sugar, tea, butter, and some fish. I'm going to say what would be on my mind would be, I can't wait for dinner today. You know, it's going to be a good meal.
Alicia never made it home.
She left the docks and walked home through Pearse Street, and that's when tragedy struck.
There are gifts for all this Christmas in Eason's 3 for 2. Thoughtful surprises for them, unbeatable value for you. Value on these huge titles and many hundreds more. Just find the little symbol and mix and match across the store. It's not just books, it's cards and wrap, toys and all you see. And for every 2 you buy, you get the third one free.
This Christmas, you could have some magical new movie moments.
We're going to need everyone to believe.
What are you waiting for? It's Christmas. With Sky Movies, you can enjoy more of the year's biggest box office hits.
Knock, knock.
12 months before online subscription services. And whenever you want on demand.
It's a glorious day.
Perfect for entertaining the family this Christmas.
Isn't this the best bit of Christmas?
To upgrade to Sky Movies, simply go to sky.ie/magical.
Ho, ho, ho.
Sky. Believe in better.
Feeling a bit woolly-headed? If you are bunged up, it makes it hard to concentrate. Try Sudafed decongestant tablets. They act fast to ease the swelling in your nasal passages and help clear your head from congestion. For a clearer head, try Sudafed.
On PlayStation 3, you can swap time with Skylanders Swap Force. Walk tall with Wonderbook Walking with Dinosaurs. And save the world with Lego Marvel Superheroes.
It's clobbering time!
PlayStation 3, something for everyone this Christmas.
May good fortune be with you, may your guiding light be strong. Build a stairway to heaven with...
Yeah, well stood, yeah. That was the last time. Yeah, that was the last time. They wouldn't have seen
The landowner at Williamstown had family connections. Christmas 1913 came with no promise of an end to the lockout. Daily conflict erupted between union members and the strikebreakers who had taken their jobs. Alicia Brady collected a food parcel on Dublin's quays. As she headed home along Pearse Street, a row flared between a group of women and a strikebreaker delivering coal to St. Mark's Church.
The strikebreaker was allowed to carry a gun for his own protection in case of strikers attacking him, and they did that day. But in the meantime, we have Alicia passing here, going home. The chap that's delivering coal produces his gun, a shot is fired. She just completely in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It gets locked, but I'd say it was very, very severe.
She put up her hand and the bullet went right through there. She got septicemia, I'd say. So that was the 19th of December and she died the 1st of January.
There is no photo of Alicia, but her family says she was very like her younger sister, Martha.
And did Granny ever look like she was getting upset when she'd talk about it, or?
You just imagine if you come out of school and somebody met you outside of the school and just said your sister has been shot, you would get a blooming shock, wouldn't you? That it would never leave you.
The nearest thing they have of her is Bridget, and I think she is the closest thing to a photograph we could get to Alicia, which is nice. You look at photos and you think, is she one of them? Is she standing there? And then you look at them for so long, you can nearly picture her there, you know, in these old clothes, and then you try to think, by this stage, it was going on 3 months in this picture. Was she full on looking? Was she tired? Were they cold? And at 15, did she stand and think, this man is just amazing and he's going to help all of us here? You know, and if we keep going as strong as we are, we can make a change.
In December 1913, the union was handing out £3,000 in weekly strike pay. But the crucial aid lifeline from Britain was drying up. The union's kitty was down to less than £700. Pressure on Larkin took its toll. He was often missing, under arrest, or campaigning in Britain. James Connolly was drafted in from Belfast as Larkin's deputy.
With Larkin, he liked you or he didn't like you, and you know, if you got on his wrong side, life could be very uncomfortable. Whereas at least with Connolly, you knew where you stood, and he would go by the rules. But for Larkin, there were no rules. He was the rules.
Of the two of them, James Connolly was far more methodical. He described Larkin as being more interested in the Larkinite movement than the Labour movement. That would drive him to despair.
But Larkin wanted the limelight focused on himself. He had a suspicion, I think, of rivals emerging. He also suffered, I think, seriously from jealousy.
The Larkins were threatened with a Christmas eviction from their house in Auburn Street. Like other families, they refused to pay rent during the lockout.
I was quite surprised seeing the whole family together. I guessed that it was probably taken here in relation to the door. I wouldn't say they were incredibly happy, to be honest. I mean, Elizabeth looks quite worried. There was a journalist for an English paper that came round and wrote just a very small piece on Big Jim being released from prison. What he called it was a rebel's wife, and what he wrote here about her was she seems to show the strain of being a rebel's wife. Although she is herself keenly enthusiastic for the cause of Labour, she has 3 children, the eldest boy at school, but smilingly declared that they were too young to be rebels yet. She looked after everything, the house, the children, but I don't think she was getting what she really needed was the love, you know, because his energies were elsewhere.
Ireland landed himself in a mess, and now he expects us not only to pay for the mess, but to actually have strikes in this country that we cannot win.
The work began, but on employers' terms.
I think Dublin employers come out of this very badly.
Together beautifully and easily. Yes, we like being in the centre. Jervis Shopping Centre Dublin, in the centre of shopping.
I am spectacular zooming. I am more than a gift. I am a Coolpix S9500. I am a Nikon.
There are gifts for all this Christmas in Eason's 3 for 2. Thoughtful surprises for them, unbeatable value for you. Value on these huge titles and many hundreds more. Just find the little symbol and mix and match across the store. It's not just books, it's cards and wrap, toys and all you see. And for every 2 you buy, you get the third one free.
There comes a moment every year when it just hits you.
Mamacita.
And you know you've been Christmased. This year, Meteor are doing the Christmasing. Because we have €1 million worth of credit and cash to give away.
And because he will leave.
There'll be winners of free credit every minute of every day. And each week, somebody wins a massive €25,000 cash. Now that's a happy Christmasing. Just top up by €10 or more or see meteor.ie. And you too could get Christmased with Meteor's €1 million giveaway.
Drive anywhere, against anyone. Every corner, every smash, every spin. Over 30 tracks, 1,200 cars. The world is your track. GT6, only on PlayStation 3.
Last week, my wife said she had a backache. She found it difficult to run, twist, or jump. Last week, I felt a whole lot safer. Unlike products that work by only cooling and heating the skin, Voltarol contains an anti-inflammatory which strikes at the cause of pain, providing powerful, deep-down relief. Voltarol, the joy of movement.
In the big Christmas event at Curry's PC World, Samsung Galaxy Tab 3s. Choose from the 10-inch, 8-inch and the 7-inch model with €60 off at only $169. Save €20 on the new 5th generation iPod Touch, combining power, performance and great looks. This 16 gigs down to just $229. And save 20% off selected headphones, including top names like these Beats Solo HDs, now down to just $159. In the big Christmas event at Curry's PC World. We can help.
This is Codaline with their debut album, In a Perfect World. Featuring Love Like This, All I Want, Brand New Day, and their #1 single, High Hopes. Now available as a deluxe 2-disc. The biggest Irish album of 2013 just got bigger. Codaline, the debut album, now only $10.99 at HMV and Extravision.
I'll head up to Aldi, I'll have my list. I just want to do one shop in one place because I just want to enjoy the time with the family and no stress.
I'm going out for lunch.
$14.90, lads. I got this.
We're all going out to dinner.
But the chicken's new. It's your favourite.
Afford to live again with flexible finance options when you change to a new generation Renault from just $141 per month. Over 60,000 Irish motorists found out they could save on their running costs with a new Renault. Find out how much you can save.
This month on Crime Call.